that you give the government another chance. What do you say to that argument?
Well, it's not what I say, it's what the electorate will have to say. How I vote is how I will vote. But I just want to reflect what I'm seeing as a journalist looking at the electorate. And I think the electorate is saying at this point, at least several on one side, and then there are others on the other side. There are others on the other side who are supporters of the ruling party saying, yeah, give the electorate a chance, give the government a chance, because they have put up a stadium, they are working on roads, they are doing X, Y, and Z. Then they're also taking the position that you can't give anybody else a chance, because it is going to take us back to some time that most young people don't even remember. And it's not that you want to forget history. It's just that you want to make a move forward without having history weigh you down and burden you down. So, and to reveal history in a way that is true and objective to all concerned. Because when I hear people say some things, I say, really, was I not there when this thing happened? Because their view of it is completely different from what actually happened. So then there is that fear tactic that is put in place there. And I think I've always pointed out that Guyana has always had elections based on fear. Fear in terms of race, that we don't want this person in because then they will be on top and we will be suppressed and oppressed and repressed. And it happens the other way around. So there's a lot of fear-mongering going on in terms of the electioneering, particularly from the ruling party. The opposition or the majority coalition, because you would recall that they had the majority when combined in terms of votes. It's a quirk of the Constitution that allowed for the person who had less votes than the combined group to become the executive and run and govern the country. So the majority collective is saying, look, these are the issues that have kept the country back, that have enriched the few, that have not made the youth of the country productive. That's one of the reasons they have to bring out drugs. They have to do the things that they're doing. And those are some of the issues that cause them to see the need for there to be change and make the point that it is time that the country gets to breathe. It is time that the country moves forward in a way that everybody will feel that they are part of the development of the great land of Guyana.
At what point you personally, Enrico the citizen, not the journalist, became hopeful that change is likely?
Well, I'm always hopeful in Guyana. I'm always optimistic. But more particularly at this point, because the numbers in terms of both the government and the opposition could be close. And therefore this election is even more exciting than some of the others where the numbers were not necessarily as close. it is also a matter of public opinion. I think when you move around, you get the distinct impression that persons want to see some kind of difference in the society. It's not dissimilar to what happened in 1992, where the government at the time had been there for a while, a long time, and persons were kind of just fed up. And I think what has happened here in this stage is that the government has been around for a while, so people are again fed up. But the government will say, look, don't get disillusioned. This is what we are doing for you. The opposition or the majority coalition will say, no. What you have done is feathered your own nest, and you are not really the government of the future.
Fear, right? Elections in the past, as you mentioned rightfully, have always been steeped in fear. And you've said before that you think some of the people of Guyana have a fear of repercussion, which precludes them from standing up and speaking out against injustices and so on. But how important is a real change? How important is it to real development, right? For real change, for people to stand up for their rights and speak out against injustices without the fear of repercussions? How important is that?
Oh, very, very important. Very, very important. Whether I'm a part of Transparency International, the chapter that we're establishing in Guyana. It is very important for people to talk about corruption, perceived or otherwise. I was having a chat on the aircraft coming over from on the Fly Jamaica aircraft with President Ramata. He admits that there is corruption in the society.
The president.
The president of the country. He will admit that. The issue is whenever a president will admit it, he will admit it as if it's not his problem. It's the businessmen bribing people. It's, the public servants and so on. It is your problem. Yeah. If the society has to descend to that kind of business, it tells you something about the inefficiencies. And this is what I said to him, both as a journalist and as a citizen. It tells you that, you're dealing with inefficiencies. The moment persons feel that they have to do something to get something. So essentially, when you're looking at development, it's not just about buildings and a big project. It's about how people feel. I always recall traveling in Switzerland several years ago when I myself was a lot younger and at university. And I met with some students, well, not students, they had just finished university, graduates in Switzerland. And like most Caribbean people, we want to know who run in the country. The guy said, we don't know, we really don't care, be happy. Things are moving, things are happening in Switzerland. In fact, we think that there should be some disruption because things too nice.
You also said that Guyana should be a society where if you want to protest, you should have the freedom to protest, and the Constitution should protect that. Many are calling for constitutional amendment, change, overhaul. How much will that contribute in your estimation to true development of Guyana or true change?
Again, it's something that is so necessary to the society. I think a lot of times we're not engaged in why we have elections and why we have a national assembly, why we have a parliament. Those people on that list are going to be our legislators. That's why we're electing them, not just to be president and govern the society, but they are going to be the ones making the laws. Whether it's Rohi's daughter, Ramatar's son, Ramson's son, Gail Teixeira's relative, Luncheon's daughter, those persons, Ropes and Ben's family, those persons are going to be our lawmakers. On the other side, where there'll be a Moses Nagamotu will sit in parliament if he's the prime minister, whether it will be a Raphael Trotman or a Kathy Hughes or Trevor Williams or what's his name, Mark Ross, whether it's the young people who are sitting with the more experienced politicians and elder persons in the society, they are going to be the lawmakers, Christopher Jones and James Bond and all those guys. Mm-hmm. So we are electing people who will make the laws within the Constitution of Guyana. But we've got to look at the Constitution, because the Constitution in and of itself gives the president of the society powers that are sort of imperial, sort of king-like powers, if I can say that. And you saw that happen. President Ramatar faced a no confidence motion. What did he do? Suspend the parliament. Suspend the people who were elected to put a check on him. You know? So we've got to look at the Constitution. You've got to look at things that allow the police to do what they're doing, allow the president, as in Jagdio's case, to issue radio license or radio frequencies to friends, family, and fellow travelers and favorites. So it's a society that needs to have a rethink of its constitution and have a rethink of the laws flowing therefrom, because the constitution is the supreme law of the land.
Let's take a break, Enrico. We are back with Mr. Enrico Woolford. Enrico, the question being asked by some in the diaspora is, are the people of Guyana ready for change and ready to commit to what it takes to bring about this change? Some believe the people are not quite ready, and without their concentrated impetus, Guyana will never change. What are your thoughts on that based on what you're seeing on the ground?
Guyana is changing. I mean, sometimes the diaspora, because they are a little distant from the society, and because they are looking at the society from the outside, they do not necessarily see all of the things that are happening. It is interesting that you're saying the diaspora is not seeing the need for change. The diaspora has lived in a society, particularly in the United States, where change has happened in a way that was historic. Everybody expects that in a society that is largely a white society, that race plays a part in terms of who runs the society. And if democracy were not seen as race-based, then the election of President Obama would not have been historic. The fact that he was elected means that the society in which they live, in which they now live, has evolved and has moved. It is also interesting that some who are from Guyana, who see race as an issue, as, look, we don't want this type of person to rule over us. They are living in New York, living in Richmond Hill, living in parts of Brooklyn, living in parts of Schenectady, living in Atlanta under a society governed by somebody that if they were in their own country, they may not have accepted as a leader.
That's interesting.
So we've got to look at things like that and look at changes and deal with our internal issues. And then look at the Guyana society and say, will we continue along the same path? Or is it time to move forward and change the society in such a way that the entire country benefits?
The last time you were here, well, on CWS Journeys, you spoke about advocating for the change or for the implementation of intellectual property rights. Is there any progress with that? And should that happen, how would you rate that on the list of changes that is necessary for Guyana's development or Guyana's transformation?
One of the things I said up front, Selvin, was this. When President Obama went to Jamaica, it was not an official visit to Bob Marley's house. And the reason he went to Marley's house was because when he was 15, 16, 17 or 18, whatever age he was, or when he was in his 20s, he was able to listen to Marley's albums. And I could see a young fella like Barack Obama, in whatever age he may be listening, hearing and singing along to emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but yourself could free your mind. And using that as an impetus to move forward, to bring about change in communities. Because remember, he was a community leader.
Yes.
So, but what made Marley important and interesting was the fact that Marley's talent, Marley's product was and still is protected in terms of intellectual and copyright laws. Up to 3 or 4 months ago, the estate of Bob Marley won a landmark decision in the U.S. court in the western districts, in the western part of the United States, in terms of branding Marley. All those T-shirts that
Yes.
you see people wearing, right? The Marley's estate still benefit from that. So intellectual property rights, copyright, all those things are going to be important in terms of the development of the society. Because particularly for young people, particularly for people who are involved in ICT, in information and communication technology, in terms of